beaten the world champions New Zealand. Final score, England 50, New Zealand 45.
Do you remember playing it at school? Maybe you even played for a club. But what do you know about the world's largest female sport? Netball was invented by Professor James Naismith along with basketball and moved across the pond to England in 1895. It's played by over 20 million people around the world, but has still failed to make it to the Olympic Games. The International Federation of Netball and England Netball are trying to change this with the Back the Big campaign. However, with applications to 2012 and 2016 refused, it won't be until 2020 that we might be able to see them gracing the world stage. To make that step, another sport must leave, which means the fight to get into the Olympic Games will be all the more difficult.
Hello and welcome to Super League Netball exclusively on Sky Sports.
Over the next 15 minutes, I'm going to look at how netball's doing in the UK and what the plans are for the future. But first, I'm going to examine the Olympic bid and the impact it could have on the game. Since the modern Olympics started in 1896, female sports have found it difficult to make it to the top. In Beijing last year, there were only 127 female events compared with that of 165 male ones. Netball will be hoping to add to that list, and projects in the UK such as the cooperative Back the Big campaign are aiming to raise awareness of the sport competitively. I went to speak to Avarsi Naidu, the CEO of the International Netball Federation, to see what it would mean for the sport to get Olympic status.
Netball is already a huge sport, and to have the sport in the Olympic Games would certainly be a fantastic showcase for us to show the sport off at the best sporting event in the world, really. We already participate in the Commonwealth Games, but the Olympic Games obviously gets more credibility. Also, yes, brings some money into the game.
If netball do get the go-ahead, then there are many strategic issues which will need to be looked at before any plans can be made. The current netball system has separate governing bodies for Northern Ireland, England, Wales and Scotland. To compete in the Olympics, they will have to go under the Great Britain banner. Getting into the Olympics is one thing, but staying under the moniker of Team GB is something that will need to be discussed at length. Sue Holvey, the CEO of Wales Netball, explains what will need to be done long term.
The discussions that would need to take place around whether this team is just going to be a team or whether there would actually need to be a GB Netball Association, because obviously that's a little bit more involved. Currently, at least 3 of the 4 home nations are limited companies. We would then have to be feeding into a structure or setting up another layer of governance. Now, that would mean that there would have to be staff at GB level and funding coming into GB level. So it's quite a big task to actually set something up that would sit above the current structure.
Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for your
Let's not worry about the fine print. Let's just celebrate the fact that New Zealand have pulled off their most remarkable victory ever.
With England being third in the world and the rest of the UK in the top 20, a GB team would surely be one of the favourites to take home a medal. To have any chance of getting gold in 2020, the current Great Britain teams will have to find a way past the netball powerhouses of New Zealand and Australia. The Southern Hemisphere teams have dominated at international level, especially in the World Championships. Since its inception in 1963, New Zealand have taken the trophy home 4 times, and Australia took the title for a record 9th time in 2007. The only other team to win the World Championships is Trinidad and Tobago in 1979, when they were joint winners with the teams from Down Under.
Dethroned 4 years ago, but Queens of the Corn again. Australia's won the World Championship for the 9th time.
Paul Clark, the CEO of England Netball, thinks there's only one way for the Super League to go so that Team GB can get that gold medal.
If England is going to achieve its aspiration of being number 1 in the world and continue to compete effectively with Australia and New Zealand on the world stage, then we've got to move over the next 2, 3, 4 years to a position where our athletes are full-time. I think they're very professional in their attitude, their approach, and the fact that they can balance their work and their university commitments with their netball commitments and still position themselves as number 3 in the world, I think is a massive tribute to the level of professionalism that they show. I think it's the full-time athlete element that we move towards over the next 2 or 3 years. I think it's inevitable. It comes to all sports or most sports, so we're just going to be prepared to manage that out.
Fancy ads, massive billboards. Netball is getting a big boost with a new Trans-Tasman competition. It's promising tougher games for the girls and more money too.
Australia and New Zealand have already taken the fully professional route with the announcement of their ANZ Championships back in 2007. It pits teams from both countries against each other until there's only one left. The Aussies and the Kiwis weren't the only one to benefit from the league after they allowed international players in, with England co-captain Karen Atkinson going over to play in Perth in the first season. Atkinson thinks it's not long before England develops their own pro league. The championships have had high attendance figures and strong television coverage over the past 2 years.
Good evening, glad you could join us. Well, the winner of today's match here will go straight through to that grand final. The loser comes away with absolutely nothing.
At 29, goal shooter Karen Gregg from Super League side Northern Thunder would not be able to compete in 2020 or beyond. However, she is still hoping she can have an impact on the game.
In my job position at the moment, working as regional talent coach for England Netball, so some of the girls that I'm actually coaching and working alongside with could actually get that opportunity to play in there. So it would be, from a working perspective, a fantastic opportunity for some of my athletes to ultimately represent Great Britain at Olympics.
Over the past few years, the profile of the sport's been gradually increasing, and England Netball believed that the Olympics would be the icing on the cake for the game. However, despite the success internationally and domestically, netball has struggled to make an impact on the IOC. Games Director of England Netball Nigel Hall believes this is due to the reputation it's gained since it became a school sport in the early 20th century.
We still suffer as a sport from netball being perceived as a very traditional sport that everyone played at school in the rain, in long skirts or whatever it might be, and I got wet and cold, and every time the ball came to me I dropped it and I never got near it. There are a lot of people that have that perception of netball. If you see international netball played at the moment, any of the test matches we played against Jamaica 2 weeks ago on Sky Sports, through the Cooperative Super League, or the Commonwealth Games or World Championship netball we play, you'll see it's a very, very different game these days. Netballs are very modern, very fast, very athletic, very stimulating and exciting sport to both watch and take part in.
To join the other 29 sports of the Olympiad, netball will have to compete against games like basketball and handball, which are more popular in the strong Olympic countries such as the USA, Germany and Russia. It's hard to imagine netball becoming an Olympic sport until the perception of the public and the IOC changes. However, the sport seems to be moving in the right direction, with Sport England reporting that over 200,000 women play on a regular basis. It has been a school sport for over 100 years and has not had difficulty with recruiting young players. The hard part's been trying to keep them, with many young girls dropping out during secondary school. The General Household Survey found that only 53% of females take part in physical activity regularly. This drops to 36% when walking is excluded, in comparison to males, where 51% join in sports that do not include walking.
Advantage goalkeeper. Goal defence contact passing.
I asked England Netball Chief Paul Clark what could be done to change this.
The more people we get physically active, the better, and taking it for granted, and really getting those sort of good habits started with young people in schools. So, when the other pressures come on, when the other demands come on their time, they will still continue through, because sport and netball is so much in their blood that it doesn't cross their mind to stop playing.
But how can netball make that change?
Netball isn't the only sport in this country that is played predominantly by women and girls. You don't need to put the prefix women in front of the sport to know it is a women's game. Now, if we can raise the profile of that and communicate to women and girls that it is good to play sport, that yes, you can be an elite athlete, but that's not essential. You don't have to wear all the gear. It is quite acceptable for women to play sport and empower them to play within that sport. There's a major social benefit on there, because all the statistics say that men are more inclined to play sport, women drop out of sport far quicker and far easier than men, and the Olympics would help to legitimise a truly women's sport out in society.
Netball is almost entirely played by girls, with very few male teams and no male leagues in Great Britain. This is something that the sport seems to thrive on. It is played in over 60 different countries on 5 continents and is the largest participation sport for women around the world.
Here comes the girl.
Currently, the elite netball players take part in the Super League, which brings in the top teams from England, Scotland and Wales. It's been running for 3 years with sponsorship from the Cooperative Group and games televised on Sky Sports. There's no doubt that it's improved the domestic game, with England moving up a world ranking from 4 to 3. Wales are threatening the top 10, sitting in 13th, and Scotland are placed 3 behind them in 16th. This year's Super League winners Team Bath have produced 9 senior England players and 4 under-21s, including Ebony Beckford-Chambers, who began the Back the Big campaign on Facebook, which has now almost 40,000 members. There is, however, a worry that if netball fails to make it to the Olympics, it could have a detrimental effect on the domestic game. Nigel Hall explains more.
There's quite a lot of examples at the moment of athletes, particularly with 2012 around the corner, and I'm not sure whether this will be quite the same after 2012, incidentally, but with 2012 on the agenda, you can see examples of talented athletes in one sport looking to see if actually they can transfer into an Olympic sport, because there's a home Olympic Games and Olympic medals around the corner, and there are specific programs being run by UK Sport and others looking specifically for athletes who've got the physical and technical and mental capabilities to make that transfer. Netball could be suffering from that at the moment, with some netballers looking to go to other Olympic sports, whereas if we're in an Olympic sport, potentially they'd come back, or athletes from other sports would come to netball.
Netball is aiming to bring extra primary school children into the sport to try and keep more players for longer and combat the secondary school dropout. The High Five scheme gets girls and boys to play a mixed 5-a-side system to make the game more accessible and easier to understand. It also hopes to teach them social skills that can benefit them later in life. This seems to be working, with participation levels around the country at an all-time high, and many girls hoping to make it to the England team.
This is what everyone's been waiting for, though. Netball at its best, certainly worthy of the final.
Netball is popular in some African countries such as Ghana, Kenya and world number 6 Malawi. Urvasi Naidu believes the game can play a big part in the lives of players from these countries.
We've always thought that there is a very strong link between sport and sport for development. There are lots of issues in relation to poorer countries where playing sport is definitely a huge benefit to health and to growth and to development, so women's development, women's empowerment, and getting young girls and women to play in a team sport such as netball teaches them social skills, teaches them other life skills which they can use as they go forward. It's certainly about health, fitness, but also about women's empowerment, bringing them into a sport so that they can play and feel some sort of camaraderie with their teammates.
Although they are placed 6th in the world, Malawi has suffered from a lack of finance, like many of the other teams from third world countries. However, they beat South Africa in the 2007 World Championships to move up into 5th in the world rankings, and were only recently taken over by Samoa. Although on a trip to Europe in April last year, the team were forced to appeal for kit. The Scottish Netball Association donated clothing for the players and for other sports such as table tennis. The managers of a New Zealand burger bar also donated a team dinner after the food shortage in Malawi. The netballing community will have to work together like this if the sport is to survive in poorer countries. Netball is certainly a sport going in the right direction, with professional leagues cropping up and participation levels on the increase. However, it's struggling to reach its goal of becoming an Olympic sport. Failing to achieve the target could have ramifications, although if they do make it, the benefits could be exponential. As a predominantly female sport, it's unique and could help towards levelling the gender imbalance in the Olympics. The Sky Sports deal with the Cooperative Super League is already proving to be good for the sport's reputation, but as a game, netball will always find it difficult to shrug off the perception of not being a proper sport. The deal will only last another year, so there's an opportunity for the sport to gain more publicity from a new contract. Let's hope the netball can shoot its way into the 2020 Olympics.